who have gathered here with us to join the seminar, which we are going to be holding on the topic about reopening the schools. And I'm really, really excited to greet everyone. We are mostly here around the Baltic Sea, but hopefully you are everywhere around the world. And there's one issue which I think all of us share, and that's about the reopening of the schools. And we believe that most of the educators around the world are thinking about this topic, that how might we be ready for these new challenges that are in front of us in these really unexpected times. And it can be a reopening and then closing and reopening again. So we are really not quite sure what is going to happen. And that's why we have also decided to call our seminar with an unofficial title, that what to do when we really don't know exactly what to do. But with the help of our speakers and hopefully also your questions, which will be coming in soon, we will get some good ideas and also share this challenge with each other so that we know where we are and that we know that there are many of us struggling with the same questions. But we'll have a few of the really from the field, the insights that we can share. And I would like to introduce us to the speakers who have joined us today and whom you will be hearing a bit more in a couple of seconds. But first of all, I would like to introduce Kathleen Naglee, the head of International School in Helsinki, where she's the principal, and she has also served as the chair of the Central and Eastern European Schools Association. Hi, Kathleen.
Hi, Triin. How are you today?
Beautiful. As the second speaker, we have Sheena McGonigle, who is the creator and founder of Mighty Altogether Mindfulness initiative. And she's also a member of the board at the American International School of Vilnius. Hi, Sheena.
Hi, Triin. How are you?
And as the third speaker, we have Kadri Tuisk, who is the founder and CEO of Clanbeat.
Hi, Triin. Happy to be here and having you all here in the chat.
Wonderful. And Clanbeat is also the organization under the patronage of which we are having today's talk. So it is about the school leadership series, where we hope to offer lots of good space for productive discussions and great idea sharing. So thank you all for being with us and having the first such type of event with us today. A couple of sort of organizational notes we would like to share as well is that if you would like to join in the discussion, and you're very welcome to do so, please open up the website with sli.do. And you will see the event code just right below here, reopen. And you can post all the questions that you have, and we will try to include them to the best of our ability to the seminar as well. And then if you also don't mind, you would be really welcome to also share when we are joining the seminar on our Facebook page and introduce yourself a bit as well, like where are you from? And if you would like to just have a discussion, then please use our Facebook event page for that. But these are the organizational notes, and I would really like to pass the word on now to our guest speakers. And let's kick off by mapping our current realities. That what are the things you are observing around you in terms of the schools reopening at this point of time in the countries where you are, which you can also explain in a little while. But what are the most important signals you are picking up? And Kathleen, let's start with you.
Well, I'm in Finland at the moment, and Finland just reopened its schools last Thursday and Friday. And I can tell you where we're at in this region, that there are countries in our area that have reduced their R number. And what we have found is that schools are being asked to reopen with different types of parameters that we've never experienced before in schools. And the signals we were first getting were for countries that were first making these decisions, which were primarily in Denmark and in Norway. And we looked very quickly to see what guidelines they were being given so that we could possibly anticipate what would happen in our own region. And I think many school leaders around the world, this is going to be the critical piece as to what will be the national guidelines provided to each country and how that plays out in the context of your school. And right now, there is no worldwide guidance on what a school should look like under social distancing, under different types of safety procedures. So we're all guessing. So I think the name of this forum about how we're moving on when we don't know what we're doing, I think is legitimate. And we're finding that it's left to the hands of school directors to scramble at the moment as to what kind of procedures we put in to make our community feel safe. And I'll just say that for now, and I think we'll be talking later. I can turn it to Triin for you to maybe move on to others.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Kathleen. And I will pass the word to Sheena.
Thank you very much. Just to let you know, the background for us at the minute is we are, I'm in Lithuania. I'm on the school board for the American school in Vilnius. And we, as a board, decided some weeks ago that regardless of whether the government here said we should go back or not, we were taking it that we would just continue learning from home. So the online learning, because we had invested so much in it and the students had got into a routine with it, we felt that we would continue with that. Now the government has announced that it wants schools to open at the end of this month. And we looked at a social emotional level, what the kids needed in our school, and felt that really for a lot of them, especially because it's an international school and there are children who won't be coming back to school after this term, and there are children obviously who are going on to college and universities, that it would be a good idea if we in some way could facilitate them coming back, just to clear out their lockers, to spend some time with their friends, with their peers, and feel that sense of connection. So what we've done is we were continuing our online learning to the end of the month. We would have had the first 2 weeks of June is what we call our without walls, where we don't really do a lot of academic. It's mostly social and emotional learning, and it's about going away for overnights and field trips. So the 2 weeks in June will be really that connection and giving the staff and the students the opportunity to make those connections. And it was funny when we were debating before we got the mandate to go back, we were debating whether we would or not. We polled our staff, and all of the staff that weren't teaching staff said they wanted to go back, and all of the staff that were teachers said they didn't. So it's very different sides of the same coin. It's a difficult time for everybody within the school, and especially for the directors of schools who have to, as Kathleen said, react with immense stress, pressure to make the right decisions, and bearing in mind that what everybody wants is the safety of the participants within the school. So that's where we're at currently. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And Kadri, I know you have also been in touch with many schools and Estonian education scene as well in general, and even international. Like, what are you observing about the current time?
Yes, as Kathleen mentioned, that they had a really short period of time of adjusting to the new rules and the restrictions coming in from the government. And in these kind of times, we at Clanbeat are helping schools to prepare the staff processes into the state where you are able to do those adjustments super fast and in a very humane way. And what we have noticed is that these kind of changes are bringing insecurity into each person's table, and how to deal with those insecurities and how to make them visible and normalize them in a way that problems would come out fast and they would be able to nurture and react it to in a timely manner, working out the problems together. And this is a topic from the school staff side, but also from the student side. So from the school staff side, we are having the situation where you have to adjust to the new situation super fast. Some of the teachers or school staff members might not want to come back, and some are coming back. How to keep them in the same information space, how to make them share their concerns and also their highs and lows in a way that everybody would be involved and knowing what is going on. And also from the student side, what I have noticed is that the social distancing has put a lot of pressure into kids, and they are having this kind of fear of missing out, that not so much socializing is going on, and now they're returning to the schools, and some of the group dynamics have been broken down, and how to establish healthy relationships and how to support them in a way that nobody would be left out, and have this kind of healthy way of returning to the community in a supportive way. So these are the topics which really are on my table, working together with schools right now.
Thank you, Kadri. And really, it is mostly all about people, and also in the preparatory discussions for this webinar, we have been sharing a lot that there's really a lot of things that are going on among the community in the school, and it's very hard to underestimate the importance of actually really making sense of what is going on with the people. And so I would like to ask Sheena, also coming from your background and knowing about people's psychology, and what are the needs that you really think that all of us should be very much aware of when we plan different kinds of actions and think about our strategies? But what are the underlying emotions that you notice people going through, which we by far should not ignore?
Okay. Well, Triin, I would start with the children, because that's what all schools really have at the centre. The well-being and the mental health of the young people they are supporting. And what we need to do is really prepare them for a new norm. If you think about it, the children left school and didn't know when they were coming back. They left it in an ordinary day with everything that had happened, just all ordinary. And they were told that the school was closing and they would be back whenever. And now that whenever is upon us, they won't be going back to what they have known as their norm. And they will have the expectation that it is going to be the same. And we need to communicate exactly what it is that they will be going back to. And we need parents to work with our children to prepare them for that, especially the younger children. So they'll drive up and it'll be the same school building, but when they go in, it'll be different. There will be desks missing. There will be social distancing. There will be hand sanitizers. There'll be wash hand basins. There will be new procedures in terms of where they can go and where they can't go. And this is going to be a time and a challenge that we don't want to be enforcing upon our kids, that we're shouting at them that, you know, it becomes a regimented school. No school wants that. What we want is kids to be able to move throughout the school, but know what the limits are. And that starts with preparing them for the changes and making sure that the home environment, it's discussed all the time, that we're going back in a couple of weeks and you know it's going to be different, and what are you looking forward to? And, you know, starting looking at the positive things about going back. For young children and for children with sensitive needs, you know, going back into the school environment with noise, if they've been at home for 10, 12 weeks, that can be quite an impacting thing emotionally for them. It can be a sensory overload. So again, preparing them by encouraging parents to meet social distancing picnics, social distancing football games. So the kids are starting to see their friends again, if there's time for that. Unfortunately, with Kathleen's school, there wasn't time for any of this sort of preparation. But some schools know that they're going back in a week or in 2 weeks. And you can start now communicating exactly what the school's going to look like to the parents so they can prepare the kids, communicating that to the older kids, asking the parents to bring the kids together for some social interaction before they get back to school. And really, when we get back to school, I think most schools should be focusing on the emotional and needs of the kids now. This is it's a crisis. I don't like using the word crisis because it gives us all a sense of anxiety, but it really is. It's a pandemic. We don't know what some of the kids are dealing with. They could be dealing with loss. They could be dealing with grief. They have concerns possibly of family members living abroad, and there's a lot going on for them. So really what we need to be doing in the few weeks before the summer holidays is nurturing, holding that space for them. In terms of teachers, we are looking at teachers who at this time of year naturally are nearly burnt out because of the academic year. They have had the additional pressure of trying to teach remotely, teach online, and be at home with their own children. So we have a large responsibility to the mental health and well-being of our staff, and not putting them under pressure that is not necessary or undue pressure, and hopefully being able to build in time for them over the summer where there is nothing asked of them. And the one thing I'm going to say, which probably isn't going to be very popular, is that the school boards, I think, have a responsibility to their own directors. So the director of your school is the person who has made all of the decisions, the person who carries the load, the person who deals with the students, the staff, and the parents through all of this, who liaises with government officials, who ultimately has responsibility. And their ability to actually switch off, to rest, and to allow their mind, their body to rejuvenate, that hasn't been there for them. And coming into the summer, what they're going to be looking at is preparing for next year. And I would suggest, as a practical way, that maybe directors and their vice director and whoever the management teams are within the school sit together or online and decide what 2 weeks they are not going to be contactable. So they have time out to be able to take a breath, to be able to let their creativity come back and not just firefight. And I understand for people, especially the directors, actually not having any contact at all would be very difficult. So I could suggest to alleviate some of the anxiety as to what's happening, maybe a phone call, but not getting online, not looking up, not answering emails, a phone call to your number 2 and asking how to go today or anything I need to know, and having a conversation, hanging up and walking away. I think we ask so much of our directors. I think we ask so much of our staff that really we need to allow them time for their mental health, just to recover from this. Okay.
If I could build on some of the words Sheena was saying, and thank you for the care for us in the director's spot. We decided at some point, maybe even about a month ago, that as we could see the deterioration of mental health in our school, of all members of our community, that well-being had to lead every decision from that point on. Mm-hmm. And I can't overemphasize this point, that if you are returning to school in the next few weeks, this should lead all decisions about what happens. So how you're bringing families back in, how you're bringing the teachers back in. The level of fear is incredibly high. People are worried about their families, they're worried about themselves, they're worried about each other, and how you are creating this supportive environment that doesn't divide your community over choices that you might have to make. And that's one of the leading pieces I've been considering during this time, is how can I make sure that whatever your viewpoint was, that you felt supported, and that we're trying to listen to people deeply about those fears, and that we're trying to remove pieces of how school runs that is adding additional anxiety when it doesn't need to be there at all. And how can we remove some of the academic worries or about getting certain things done in time or things done as they normally would happen. How can we remove some of those hurdles and just kind of guide people into the summer, if that's happening for you now, as we go back into August, for us, we start quite early here in Finland, and thinking about the reopening of school, we're already having that same conversation. How do we start? How do we orient new families? How do we help our families recover, knowing that we're not sure how it's going to look like, even 6-8 weeks from now when we start again. And we're in the middle of reinventing school worldwide. And you can't go wrong if well-being, social emotional learning is your leading point. And I would highly suggest for those who are out there around the world listening to this, that this cannot be underemphasized. It's the most important piece of what happens next for all of us. And maybe it was all along. We know that a great emotional, warm, loving environment is best for kids. It always has been. We also know those students perform best when they feel safe, when they feel loved, when they feel cared for. So if that was missing somehow in your community in the past, well, don't let it be missing as you move forward.
Thank you, Kathleen. I have a question for you. You mentioned that this kind of changes are really quick and creating this kind of unknown. And I really love your input on like how to do it the most humane way and putting people first. How do you get as a school leader into this position where you have to move very fast, make quick decisions, and at the same time get the information how everybody's feeling, what are their concerns, and how to bring it all to the around the table so you would be able to shuffle and do it elegantly? Or is this a time to be elegant? How do you manage
I would say we
it?
have to apologize often. I'm sorry. Normally we would take more of your input is something that we say continuously to our staff. And we try to get the right people into the room as fast as we can. Knowing that we have to make some quick decisions. I see one of the questions that came up was, how did we do the physical distancing? This question was essential for us because it determined on how everything else happened. In Finland, they did not give us strict rules. They said generally have less people in your building at a time and generally try to have 1 to 2 meters between people. We have smaller classrooms, and to do this meant reestablishing a completely different school. We split our students into groups, which we called crews, CREWS, and we assigned a teacher for each of those crews. We had to create an entire new schedule. We had to have to put this in place with trying to catch people up as to what's happening. So Sheena had mentioned about, as rules were coming in from the national government, I'm following those in live time, but my staff and my families might not have any idea what those rules are that I'm now trying to make quick decisions on. And I can say that, I made mistakes along the way because things were coming in so quickly and updates were happening so frantically that we might make a decision an hour ago and start implementing some pieces of that. And then found like, oh no, that has now changed. So this is what happened to us, that people were surprised by some of the choices we made because they didn't know the parameters that had just come down from the government. So this is another issue that directors had to handle. And as we're moving through something where we can make whole scale changes, if I were to go back now, I would be having some kind of live feed where people could see what the new rules were as they were coming in, and the decisions then we had to take in real time before that first day. We were even having some changes made hours before we opened the door here in Finland.
Do you also communicate the decisions which you make or you execute right away and then they later find out? How do you manage that?
Yeah, so we have many teams in our school, like most schools. First, for us, again, there's a language barrier. I don't speak Finnish. So having people, a WhatsApp group, a crisis WhatsApp group. So as some news happens in Finland often at 10 o'clock at night. So WhatsApp would come in and like, here's the new rule. And then we're trying to, find out what that's about. Next morning, trying to wrap our heads around that and then trying to make some decisions, talk to our leadership team, talk to the groups, and getting our teachers to understand what's happening. And then maybe later that day, trying to get a communication out to families as to what's happening, where we're at now, what decisions I can tell you, and what decisions we're trying to make as we're gaining information. The communication piece, of course, is always critical in schools. Has been continuous, and that is a full-time job for someone, and we don't have that person spending all day long putting these communications together. So this falls on that leadership team as well, to put those pieces into place. So yeah.
Kathleen, as you have been really going through all this, then could you also help us to really get a view of what was happening in your school? Like if you would enter your school in the first few days, and that is also the question from the audience. Thank you very much for that. What was it like in those few days? Like what did you see around you, and what were the main things? And there's also, especially like when the space is tight, then maybe some ideas about the creativity that you have also used to make sure that the 2-meter distancing can happen.
Sure. So if you were to see our school, so some of the things that we had to put in place very quickly is entrance and exit procedures. We had guidelines that we don't want to have a lot of people coming in and out of the building. And we had to restrict where people are moving in the building. So one of the rules that came down was that no visitors, guests, or parents should enter into our building. So that changed our procedure, that normally we have lower school parents entering in, getting their child ready at their locker and dropping them off, saying hello to the teacher. So we had to put all that outside, but we also had to socially distance outside. So in our case, we put spray paint on the ground where people could see what 2 meters would look like in front of different entrances. We assembled students into these core groups, which we called the crews, as I mentioned, and we had placards and posts put out all over around the school where they would stand and socially distance around that. And then we'd have an entrance procedure where they'd be coming in one crew at a time and socially distancing as they enter. As they entered into the building, we have hand sanitizer in all locations, and we are so students come in, they put some hand sanitizer, they go up to their room, and then there's a bathroom assigned to each of those crews. And we have the students then wash their hands again if there's not a sink in the classroom. During the day, we tried to restrict their movement within the building, so no teacher can come to them, and they're not allowed to move from their classroom except going to the bathroom in general. We also got procedures from the Finnish government saying for our lower school, try to get those kids outside as often as possible. So we built that into our program, and weather allows for that at the moment. So our lower school students are doing a lot of their work outside in these crews, around outside or in parks that are nearby, and socially distancing in these regions. For our upper school, they have a different schedule. So we split our day in half. That was the only way we could accommodate having these small groups throughout our school. So with 10 kids in a room, we used up all of our rooms just for our lower school. So our upper school couldn't be on campus at the same time. Upper school students come later in the day after we have a period of cleaning between the different groups. Finnish regulations said we could not use the cafeteria. Luckily, the weather is good enough at the moment that we're doing bag lunches that we do outside on most days. If it's raining, then they're eating the bag lunches in their crew rooms. For the upper school students, they're not allowed to move from class to class, and teachers were not allowed to move to them. So basically, we put distance learning into the upper school classrooms again. So we continued in this format that students have their headphones in their class. They're attending their distance classes, but they have long breaks in between where they have a chance to socialize and talk to each other, again, with social distancing procedures. So these were some of the strange parameters. We had to reinvent school. We had to reinvent the entire schedule of the school. And we had to try to find ways to fit into these new limitations. All of you listening out there will probably have completely different limitations than we had. And some schools are also doing health checks. We had to create a whole new procedure for nursing for those who might have symptoms, how that procedures went. I'm installing at the moment, I couldn't get it in quick enough. I'm having a thermal camera installed in the school that will be able to see people's body temperatures and assess 30 people at a time. And we'll have a laptop ready to go. So we'll have someone standing there and kind of watching as those enter, and then directing those to the nurse who might be a concern to us when we restart in August. But yeah, so I'd say this is kind of how the school day works for us. A lot of hand washing, a lot of cleaning, a lot of keeping people in the same place. We even had to close things down, like our staff rooms. So we don't want teachers coming in and popping in and out of each other's rooms. So we had to control movement throughout the day.
Well, thank you very much for this picture. We have also just another question from the audience, which is about the sources of the push for reopening. That how do you all feel that where does it really, most of it come from? Is it also really from the parents who need some release time as well from their childcare duties, or what do you see as the general push or discussion around this? Because we know that also some schools have been really unhappy with the decisions of needing to reopen right now.
So some depends on your context of how your school fits into a national system. Here in Finland, my international school, which is private and a nonprofit, still must follow the rules of Finland. So even though our board had originally decided to go distance learning to the end of the school year, that was overturned by the legislation of our national government. Some schools can independently make a choice. I believe Sheena's school in Lithuania has that right to make a choice. So depending on where your school fits into a system, that's one pressure. The other pressure is definitely with lower school families, children who are under the age of, I'd say, 9 or below. Parents have really struggled, and for good reasons. It's very difficult to do this well with younger students. So I would say that's where the pressure has been, not from older children and their families.
Thank you. And Sheena, would you share a bit how is your school in that aspect?
It has been, Kathleen's right, a lot of the pressure is coming from parents with younger children because online learning for the older children is a lot more straightforward. But with the young kids, try and keep them occupied. And if you have both parents at home working, which most houses have, it's a very difficult time for them. So there's been a lot of pressure coming in from parents to get us to open back up. And, we are lucky here in that the government here has stipulated that schools may open if they want to, rather than they have to open. And our end of school year is the 12th of June, so it was only a 2-week period. And as I already kind of alluded to, we don't do a lot of academic in that time anyway. So the bringing people back into school really is just for a social, emotional point of view. We are continuing some online project work for children who want to participate in that. But yes, there is an understandable amount of pressure from parents. But as a school board member, really, with the other members of the board, we have to look at the overall picture. We have to look at what is best for everybody. And at this moment in time, our school doesn't have the capacity to have everybody back at school all together. We don't have that space. So we're bringing people in groups, and we have outside space. One group will be in that for an hour, and then they will give us, there'll be a group inside space in a couple of different, and a group in the gym, and we will clean in between each, and then they'll swap around for the time that they're in during the 2 weeks. So we're having to implement a lot of the measures that Kathleen's school have implemented. And unfortunately, we're not in a position to offer full-time education as it was before this happened. And, going forward in August, it may very well be a case that we're going to be doing a blended type of learning, where it'll be some sessions online and some in the school environment. But this, with the changing nature of this pandemic and the changing nature of what's coming from government, we can only kind of estimate and prepare for what we know at this moment in time.
Mm-hmm. So this flexibility is really the key word, and also the flexibility is only possible when the team is together. Now, I know that Kadri has been thinking a lot about the ways of keeping the human connection among the teachers and also the students. And I'm just wondering, what are the urgent needs that you think need responding to, and what have you come up with in your work?
Actually, I would love to comment the previous topic as well, just a few sentences. And for those schools who are under pressure by the government to go into this last mile of opening schools just before closing, I would love to encourage to think in this design thinking kind of methodology that this is a time to really understand what is working and what is not. And you have this time to adjust during the summer. So when in August you have to go back to the schools, then you already know what is working and what is not. And this time maybe is a good time not to experiment with people's health. This should be in the first position, but to experiment with the processes. And this gives a very quick feedback also to you as a leader and the school, how to set it up the best and have learnings, have this quick feedback round coming in. And this is also something which we have been focusing in Clanbeat, that to have this kind of environment where this kind of quick feedback loop is coming in the most natural way to the teachers and the school staff and also to the school leadership. So those decisions could be made based on real information, not just only the gut feeling. And it's very hard to do democratic leadership in the time of crisis. And the school leaders usually have to make quick decisions based on their own best knowledge, but to really engage the community and to get the sense of best knowledge for those who actually have something to contribute as well. I think this makes our communities and schools much more stronger, and this is something we really want to encourage schools to be doing. And as Kathleen mentioned, that you actually closed down your staff room, then we at Clanbeat have virtual staff room where all those highs and lows of staffs and insights of everyday life and work can actually come together and contribute to the better decision making and actually problem solve on the spot. So if school leaders have myriad of topics in their heads, some of the topics are being dealt with without having to be micromanaging by the leadership team, because teachers are also almighty in a way of supporting each other as well. So why not to use this kind of opportunity to bring people together and support each other, because teachers are very individualistic in a way that they have to be the leaders in their classroom, but really come together and share the same topics which they have been dealing with every day with their colleagues might give a very big value to this kind of time. And for the students, we are working on how to help them social emotional regulation, bring out their emotions, and also reflect on what is going on in their days and plan their days much more meaningfully. And if we are living in this kind of social distancing world, how to bring the meaningful connections back to students' lives, and also have an adult from the school side who is actually noticing who is low on energy, who needs special support, and how to prevent this kind of lost kids, which we have seen during social distancing a lot, how to help those who are in the need. So this is in our hearts right now, to help this self-directed learning and social emotional well-being of students and bring communities together to support each other.
Thank you. And Sheena, from your background and everything, like in this time really where there is this uncertainty and we realize the important need of connecting to people, what would you say are some of these core understandings or processes that keep us grounded in this sort of situation where it's really rather fair to say that no one has got the right answers?
No, it's a very open question, and it's not the same for everybody. Everybody's experience is going to be slightly different depending on your economic background, depending on your age, depending on what your situation is, whether your home life is one that is contented or one that's disruptive. So there's a lot of things that will impact. And, when we say a crisis, for most of us, thankfully, this crisis has involved us just staying at home. We haven't had to go and fight, or we haven't had to go and work in hospitals, although we might have partners and stuff that are doing that. So it's been different for everybody, and it's recognizing the emotion that is rearing its head in you. So, for example, what I've discovered with a lot of parents, especially, is that there's a resentment. There is a resentment because there's no longer the separation from their family. So you don't get to say goodbye to your kids for a few hours and drop them to school, and you don't get to say goodbye to your work colleagues in the evening when you leave. There isn't the space between work and home that there was, and that does bring resentment out, and that can make for an atmosphere within the home. And within the school environment, the kids are feeling isolated. They're feeling unheard. They're feeling angry. They don't really understand. They have an understanding, but they still want this to change. They want it to get back to normal. So there's lots of different emotions for different people, and there's different ways in which we can release these emotions. The obvious thing is to make sure we get plenty of exercise. The one thing I'm going to say is that self-care in this time is absolutely paramount, especially for parents and for teachers. It is so important. And if self-care means you go out your back door and you sit in your car to have a cry or a scream or whatever it is, that's fine. Once you're able to go and release an emotion, making sure that you have a little bit of space and a little bit of time to yourself is what self-care is about. The school, the American International School at the minute, are running for parents and for teachers online meditations, so mindful meditation and a emotional freedom technique, tapping meditations, in order to help our community cope with some of the emotions that they're going through. But I'll just finish with the thing that we can start to do now is to find the common ground again and find a way of coming together. Be it some team exercises, the kids getting together in the park that we have in the Baltics here. We can go back out and commune together. So social distancing, exercising, spending some time together. And for those that can't do that, one of the things that is really good is finding a purpose, especially for young people. They can cope with a lot if they feel they are A, contributing to the greater good, or B, that they have a purpose within that. And the purpose doesn't have to be a grandiose gesture. It doesn't have to be that they're bringing dinners to the homeless shelters, which is a really good thing to do. But it can be a smaller thing, especially for young kids. So grandparents, for example, they can make it their responsibility to phone their grandparent 2 or 3 times a week and maybe do a story time with that grandparent. So there's a connection there, that they're still feeling part of a bigger picture, because that's where we get our security from, which is, most of us get it from our family. And for the extended family members, it's easy just to bring some small steps in that we can do online.
Thank you. So it's really back to the basics, and not forget, in the middle of all of these regulations and laws, that the human beings are inside. And if we fail to notice those important signals, then also we will not really succeed with other things as well too much. We know that with a crisis, there's always like so many opportunities that can come up. And I'm also inviting you to dream a little bit or envision what might be the future like. We've had one of our audience members also share with us an idea about the micro classrooms that could be in the neighborhood so that the kids do not, for example, have to move too much. So this is just one idea that maybe you want to comment as well. Or each of you, I would like you to bring out, like, what do you see as the emerging ways that we can run schools and education so that it really can remain connected and relevant to the people and our societies? And perhaps, Kathleen, you'd like to start.
Sure. I think this is a paradigm shift that's happening in education, and many of us have been seeing this from a distance for a long time, and now maybe the rest of the world is catching up to what aspects of education we should have dropped a long time ago. And if the educational process you have with students has not been built around well-being, autonomy, belonging, and connection, then you've made a mistake for a very long time. What is going to be important moving forward is meaningful work, hands-on, meaningful skill-building work for students. If you're still about content delivery and your distance learning has been about content delivery, then you have missed the boat as to what's important in education and what's the future of education. So to me, this is going to accelerate the need to understand about deep, meaningful work for our students, deep, meaningful work that's individualized, that is supportive, that is based on student agency. And if your school was already in that building stage, it's time to accelerate those processes. If we end up having micro teams or micro classrooms, to me, I think we're taking what we've known about elementary classrooms for a long time and moving it through a school. We all know that students are pretty happy when they're in second, third, fourth grade. But as soon as they go to middle school, that we see this complete deterioration when it comes to how they feel about school. So let's take the best parts of elementary education, from theories and ideas that really develop student agency, and bring them through your upper schools, and creating teams and interrelated work for students that brings them joy, brings them deep understanding, and has really great skill building opportunities. To me, that's always been the future of learning. This is going to upturn everything as to what we see, and we're going to realize we're going to maybe in this future have less time that when we can be together. If we can only be together a short amount of time because of social distancing, we have to focus on that connection between each other, the human connection that Kadri is speaking about. This has to be our main focus. Content can happen in many ways. We've known that for a long time. What's most important is building these emotional environments where students have deep, meaningful learning. And I think that's the future of education. And I think this will accelerate that in systems that understand that. If schools go back to some kind of content dumping, they're going way back in time in the wrong way.
Well, actually, I'm relating to so much what you're talking, and those keywords are also resonating with what we do in Clanbeat. And what we have seen in this lockdown is that the schooling for different schools has meant different kind of processes. Some schools have been continuing with the same way they have been doing, but just digitally, having the same length of classes and having the same amount of tasks. And then there are schools who are giving the end goals for the students and having them to work through the processes themselves, how to reach to that end goal. So there is, this time has been a very good time for experimenting the best ways of learning. And also students, we have been in contact with many students and researching how this time has been affecting them, and many of them are now in charge of their own time. And previously many schools, not all, but many schools have been what you, Kathleen, mentioned, dumping the knowledge and also dumping the goals to students. But the new paradigm is that the human agency, which you were talking about, how to give the tools and the knowledge to students, how to self-direct their own time and learning, and how to do the learning in the way that it would be most meaningful for them. And many schools are thinking how to support students in learning, like how do they learn how to learn. And if they are in a school environment and being tracked through the school day of their schedule being like 45 minutes or 1 hour or 1.5 hours of classes, then right now they have time where they can organize their own days and actually finding out what is the best way to learn for them. And I think this is super powerful in designing the future schools, so that there would be this kind of individuality and the way how to support students of realizing their potential and having them to learn in this kind of way, which is most beneficial for them. And the traditional school system, which we have had so far, might be slowing some students down or giving this kind of growth to those who are only in a specific group of students who are taking this kind of learning the most natural way. So I think the future, what we have been learning from here, is a really good learning experience, that the more personalization, listening to students and actually helping them to learn in their own terms, and how the school can support that, to bring out this individuality and how to support also that. So I think this is really inspiring. And also what we have found out, that the role of the school was emphasized during this crisis, that this is not only the place for childcare or dumping in education, this is also taking care of students' social emotional well-being and growing them as a humans. And it is very dear to me to think a human as a whole concept, and not just somebody who has to learn certain things, and how students are learning and developing as a whole. So taking this more holistic concept of the student is the way of the future as well, where we are putting lots of our effort to bring the whole student into the table. But Sheena, maybe you are also very passionate about social emotional well-being. How do you see this going forward?
Well, I'm just going to echo what both of you have said. The importance of it is it's been amplified. You touched on, Kadri, there about children being able to set out their own time schedule and being responsible. So emotional intelligence really is something that when I was at school, it wasn't even a thing. It was just, you know, some people were, and they call it personality. You had a type of personality. I'm not saying people don't have personality types now, they do, but really we believed that you were made into a certain type of personality and you could not change. And we now know with neuroplasticity, of course you can change. We can change the way we think, we can change the way we act, and we can change the way we react. And some of the key things that are coming out of this is the need for kids to be, first of all, resilient. The second thing would be that they need to be self-aware. The other thing would be that they need to have compassion for themselves and for the community and for the whole world. And by staying in, they're being compassionate and kind to others. And that's what a phrase I use a lot when I'm doing the sessions with the kids, is I'm reminding them that their staying put, their isolation is a form of compassion. But it's becoming aware of these emotions and being able to say, yes, this is the emotion that I'm feeling, naming it and bringing it out into the open and then letting it go, and dealing with those emotions. And really, as we progress as a society and we look now, employers are looking for less and less academic achievement and more emotional intelligence. They want people who know how to be empathetic. They want people to be able to read facial expressions. They want people who can be compassionate to their co-workers. And the emotional intelligence aspect of school has become as important as the academic, if not nearly more so in a number of cases.
Thank you. And it is our time to start wrapping up this discussion. When we also put up the invitation to join this seminar, we really wanted to bring out some things that we could keep in mind for reopening the schools. And I would like to ask our dear speakers to really sum up in a sentence or two, like, what is this cream of the crop? Like, what is it that we should keep in mind for reopening the schools? A chance for you to re-emphasize your most important messages. And Kathleen, perhaps let's start with you.
I would say, first of all, you might have very little choice as to how that looks. So you will have to reinvent how your school runs based on the legislation that comes down from your national government. So that is unknown, it is uncertain, and you have to be ready for that ride. I think that the big message I want to convey, though, is that there's hope on the other side. I was very, very concerned about what it would be like when we got everyone back into this very, new version of what school looks like. And we called it the safety learning plan. And I don't know if that remains even 6-8 weeks from now when school reopens again. But what we found, and we were so relieved after the first day, was that there was hope on the other side. And when the kids came back, even though at a distance and teachers at a distance, the relief of seeing each other and laughing with each other and talking face to face is palpable. And that was my biggest takeaway. Even after 2-3 hours of after reopening, everyone was so happy to see each other. And even if it's limited, even if it's different than what we've ever had before, we understand this was the piece we were missing, each other. And just know that whatever way your school does reopen up, go through with hope and love, because the kids are going to come with that, and you can come with that as well, even though you're exhausted and tired and you have no idea what's happening next. But there is hope on the other side.
That's a beautiful message. Sheena, what would you like to say?
Just that the one thing that I will say to you again and reiterate is self-care. We need to keep our energy. We need to rebuild ourselves. Rebuilding schools and changing schools and changing demands and needs can be exhausting. So everybody just be very careful and look after yourselves. It will be great when we're all back together, and let's still use these platforms that we have to communicate. Let's keep talking. Let's keep the communication open. Let's see what everybody else is doing, and let's learn from each other. And thank you for having me today. It's been a lovely experience.
Thank you. And Kadri?
Yes, for me, the most important thing is building the school culture which is inclusive. And many of schools have been putting lots of effort into building the inclusive school culture, but how to really do it in the times where not everybody is in the same physical space is question, and how to be fast in making decisions and experimenting to come to the best outcomes, because as we do not know what is happening next, then this is really important to have everybody's best intentions in mind, and also consider the thoughts of people who are around you, and also share the information in a safe and loving communication space, which is making things much more easier and taking out the anxiety, because the anxiety comes when you don't know what is happening and you don't have the place where to voice your concerns, and you have to be alone with your concerns. So really putting effort into school culture, which is inclusive, both from school staff side and also from the student side, to have the relationships being built where you can actually voice your concerns and have people who are actually dealing with those concerns as well, if possible. Would be my thoughts how to bring this thing forward in these times of uncertainty.
Yes, then from my side, I have also nothing more left to say than it's really important to take care of ourselves and each other. And I just came to this parallel, which I believe has been also used in some places, but it's really like this marathon run where you are in the end still, you are the one running it, but do not forget that you have so many people around you, and especially as school leaders, as teachers, you know that the times are difficult, but please know that you're not alone in this. And it's also always good to remember that as they tell us in the airplanes, or they used to tell us in the airplanes, that it's the first one, it's you who has to get the oxygen masks, and then you can help the others. And we really thank you for taking this time to be with us. I thank our dear speakers, and I thank each and every of you, dear viewers, now or later when you're watching us. And I hope that this has been a good time and a good hour for you to also rethink and question maybe some of these things that you are thinking or doing at your schools. And please know we are all in this together. And if you have any questions, please feel free to approach us also at clanbeat.com. And we'd be very happy to hear from you how you thought about this seminar, if you have any further questions or discussion points that we could touch upon in the future talk series. Thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.